Okay, ladies and gentlemen, sorry for the delay. Welcome to Planning Committee. This will be a first for us. We've had a few technical issues and we're still ongoing having a few issues, but just remind every participant, please could they mute their microphones until they're asked to speak. So if you can all mute your microphones, please. And I will just read out the little bit of stuff that legally we have to read out. So I'll start with that. May I remind everybody present that the meeting will be recorded via the internet and this recording archived for future viewing. Could all participants mute themselves when not speaking in order to avoid any background noise or feedback when other participants are speaking? If a participant wishes to speak, they can put their hand up. They can use the hand up option on the application, or they can use the chat. If any participant has difficulty hearing or being heard, they should let the chairman or supporting officer know as soon as they can. If they have a webcam, they should try turning this off. This may improve their audio, and it will work a lot better. If participant still has difficulty with their connection, can they please let Democratic Services know straight away, and they can dial in using a normal telephone or a mobile phone. If the above should occur, the chairman may have to delay proceedings to get a technical issue sorted, but hopefully we won't. Please bear with us through this meeting. As I say, it's a first, and we are, well, not used to it, to say the least. So first thing I'm going to do, slightly different to the agenda, is I'm going to go straight to agenda item 3, and I will come to each individual person and ask them who they are, or if they can make clear who they are, and if they have a declaration of interest. So I'll start at the top of the list. On the top of the list is myself, and I do have a declaration of interest. I have a declaration of interest in the Mysofunan application. I was on the cabinet when we decided to pursue this application, so I will move that item to the end of business and leave the room. That's my declaration of interest. I will now go to Councillor Ben Gray and ask him to confirm he can hear us and any declarations. All right, I'll have to come back to Ben. He's having some technical issues. I will go to Rhiannon Birch. Rhiannon, can you hear me? Can you unmute
nothing
yourself?
to declare.
Lovely, thank you, Rhiannon.
I have, I think.
Oh, you have something to declare.
Oh, do I?
No,
No,
I don't know.
No.
You have nothing to declare. Right, that's fine. Thank you, Rhiannon. I will now go to Christine Cave. Christine,
yes, I can hear you. Yes, I can hear you, and I have nothing to declare.
Thank you very much. Pam Drake is not on as yet.
I'm Jonathan. I'm on the phone.
Okay, Pam, you can hear us then?
I can hear you, but I can't see anybody.
Okay. Do you have anything to declare, Pam?
No, nothing to declare.
Okay, thank you for that. So after Pam, we've got Vince Driscoll. Vince, can you hear us, and do you have any declarations?
Yeah, I'm here, just on the corner. No declarations, thank you. Nothing to declare.
Vince. Okay, Stuart, can you hear us, and do you have a declaration? Stuart Edwards.
Hey, John. Yeah, I can hear you. No declarations.
Thank you, Stuart. Nick Hodges, can you hear us, and do you have a declaration?
Hello, Chairman. I'm on sound only, and I have no declarations.
Thank you, Nick. Ian Johnson, do you have any declarations, and can you hear us?
I'm present. I can hear you, Chair. I have no declarations of interest.
Thank you, Ian. Gordon, I'm not sure if you're back with us. He's not with us at the moment, okay? Councillor Parker, are you with us?
Yes, I was Cabinet Member for Housing and Building Services,
So I declare an interest in application 2019/01031/RG3, which is the land at Mysoffan and Bonvilston, and I so declare the interest.
Okay, thank you, Andrew. Leighton Rowlands, can you hear us and do you have a declaration?
Yes, I can hear you, Chair, and no, I don't have a declaration.
Thank you, Leighton. Neil Thomas, can you hear us and do you have a declaration?
Yes, I can hear you, and no, I don't have anything to declare.
Lovely, thank you. Margaret Wilkinson, can you hear us and do you have anything to declare?
Muted.
Margaret, you're muted. Can you unmute? Can we unmute her this end? Oh, she's paused now. Oh dear. Up your back. Margaret, can you unmute yourself? Margaret, can you hear us?
She can.
She can hear us, but she's not. She's got her microphone muted. I know Margaret's got a declaration as well, so I need to get to speak to her.
An officer's on their way now to help Margaret.
Okay, I'll come back to Margaret then. So after Margaret, we've got Eddie Williams. Eddie Williams, can you hear us and do you have a declaration?
I can hear you loud and clear. Thank you, John and Chair. No, nothing to declare. Thank you.
Thank you, Eddie. Mark Wilson, can you hear us and do you have anything to declare?
I can hear you clearly. I do have something to declare regarding 2019/01263/FUL, and I have stated a view on that application at another place, but I'm not going to be binded by that view, so I will look at it with clean hands.
Thank you, Mark. So Margarita, can you hear us and do you have anything to declare?
Yes, I can hear you loud and clear, and I have nothing to declare.
Thank you, Margarita. That was perfect. So we've got a couple of people to go back to. Margaret Wilkinson, are you able to hear us and speak back to us?
I'm back.
Excellent. So you can hear us. Do you have a declaration of interest?
Yes, I do. It's on planning application 2019/1031/RG3, the land at Bovenston. I am the Cabinet Member for Housing and Building.
Okay, thank you very much. I will go to Ben Gray now. Ben, can you hear us?
Yes, thank you, Chair. I can hear you now. I have no declarations, and that's that. Thank you.
Okay, I've got Gordon Kemp, which I haven't managed to talk to. Gordon, I don't know, are you there? No, okay. We're going to have to move on without Gordon, I'm afraid. So we have had no apologies for absence. And have you all had a chance to read the minutes of the meeting? And are you happy that these are signed off as correct? I will take it that silence means you are happy. If you are unhappy, please indicate that you wish to change something. I'm getting no indications from anybody, no texts coming up, so I will take that we are all happy with the minutes and we will sign them as true and correct. We've done declarations of interest. So as I said, we're going to move Mysoffan to the last application. So we will start with 7 John Batchelor Way, Penarth, and I will hand over now to Vicky to introduce it. After Vicky's introduced it, we have a speaker, but first and foremost, I'll let Vicky introduce it. So I'm going to mute and hand over to Vicky.
Thank you, Chair. Can everybody hear me? I will assume that you can, unless you tell me that you can't, okay? I'm going to just share my screen if you bear with me. Apologies. Okay, is that coming up? You can see the plans on the screen, great. Okay, so this application relates to 7 John Batchelor Way in Penarth Marina. The existing dwelling is a 3-storey terrace property in the marina. The proposal here seeks consent for a balcony extension on the front, a garage conversion, which is already carried out, so it's retrospective, a privacy panel to both the front and rear balconies on the property, and some alterations to the elevations. Members should have received a bundle of plans as well. So the plans are both within the committee report. You should have hard copies of the plans yourselves, and I'm sharing the plans on the screen as well. You'll see from the report that we have had a number of letters of objection from neighbouring properties, raising concerns that are set out on page 38 of the report and addressed by the officer in the report. I would also draw members' attention to the matters arising notes that were sent out by email yesterday, and just draw attention within there. You have at point 2, which is page 35 of the bundle, a letter from the applicant setting out their position as to why they feel their development is acceptable, and referring to various other approvals of similar development proposals in the marina. I think I'll leave it there, Chair, for now, and let the public speakers have their say and take any questions to follow. So I'll stop sharing my screen for the time being.
Thank you, Vicky. I will now hand over to the public speaker. There probably will be a little interlude while we get that sorted, but it shouldn't be too long. I'm just going to mute to. And as Kath let him in. Okay, could I ask Mr. Jeremy Peter, are you there? Can you hear us? And are you ready to go? Mr. Peter, are you there? Can you hear us? Hello, Mr. Peter, can you hear us?
Hello.
This is not. Hello.
I don't know what's going on my side.
Hello, Mr.
Hello?
Peter, can you hear us?
I don't know what that is. Okay.
Mr. Peter,
hello.
Hear you. Hello. Hang on a sec.
Hello, can you hear me at all? Hello.
Hello, Mr. Peter.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes,
hello?
that's better. Yeah.
Right.
Yes.
Can you hear
Mr.
me?
Peter, can you hear me? Yes, I can hear you. Can
right.
you hear
What
me?
happened there, Chair?
No.
Can everybody
so
else
you
hear
can
me?
hear us? Yes, I think they can. Everybody? Yes, I'm getting thumbs up around the screen. Yeah, lovely.
Okay, thank you.
So
I don't know.
now you're with us. You have 3 minutes starting from now.
Thank you. Good afternoon. By neighbours who are the adjoining neighbours at number 6. Mr. and Mrs. Davis are not opposed to the applicants undertaking a balcony to the front, but regrettably what is being built is not in conformity with what was approved. It is so members take the view that by not abiding with the approved plans significantly against this amended scheme. What is strongly objected to for both visual amenity reasons and the unneighbourly impact on their residential amenity is the full-length 1.8 metre high smoked glass privacy screen between the properties and the bifold doors that occupy the full length of the front opening, which are in clear variance with the approved plans and not with the street scene. The report agrees that these two properties form the dominant pair in the terrace that are identical in design and scale. Consequently, when changes are undertaken which do not reflect this identical symmetry, it makes the entire terrace look unbalanced, thus affecting the visual of the building and the area generally. Indeed, when the front balcony for Mr. and Mrs. Davis was approved in 2016, French doors that were proposed had to be omitted because it disrupted the symmetry of these identical sides. The assertion of a 1.8 meter high smoke glass privacy screen along the full length of the balcony, combined with the insertion of bifold doors with glazing change from lattice windows to plain windows, would harm the appearance of the front, as they are common to these identical properties. Distinctive arch-headed windows should also be avoided. Whilst front privacy screens have been installed elsewhere, as alluded by the applicant, this was an obscure glass privacy screen, not smoked, and with no changes to the front first floor's doors or fenestration. With regard to the impact on the humanity of Mr. and Mrs. Davis, their outlook will be affected from their living room. One of the main reasons why they purchased the property, probably why many people did on the estate, is because of the outlook for the bay. This value outlook undoubtedly be affected to the screen alongside the entire depth of the balcony. The way the balcony is originally designed on the front was to encourage social interactions while enjoying a pleasure of the bay. Sorry.
Mr. Peter, I'm terribly sorry. I've muted you. We're having difficulty hearing you, but my officer here has a printed copy of what you were trying to get through to us. We will read that and then have a chat to you after that, if that's okay. Are you happy with that? I'll unmute you again now. Are you happy with that, Mr. Peter?
Yeah, I'm sorry you couldn't hear me properly, Mr. Chairman. Yes, I'm happy for you to read it. If you've got any questions, I'm here to answer them.
Lovely, thank you. So if you could just mute yourself now, I will ask our Democratic Services Officer to read out what you were trying to get over to us. Thank you. Mark, are you okay to read this out, or do you want to pass it to me if you've got it there?
Okay, hope everyone can hear me. Yep, okay. Good afternoon, my name is Jeremy Peter. I'm instructed by Mr. and Mrs. Davis, who are adjoining neighbours at number 6. I have to stress that Mr. and Mrs. Davis are not opposed to the applicants undertaking a balcony to the front. I have to stress that but regrettably what is being built is clearly not in conformity with the approved plans. It is hoped that the members take the view that by not abiding with the approved plans should significantly weigh against this amended scheme. What is strongly objected to for both visual amenity reasons and the unneighbourly impact on their residential amenity is the full-length 1.8 metre high smoked glass privacy screen between the properties. The bifold doors that occupy the full length of the front opening are in clear variance with the approved plans and not in keeping with the street scene. The committee report agrees that these two properties form the dominant pair in the terrace that are identical in design and scale. Consequently, when changes are undertaken which do not reflect this identical symmetry, it makes the entire terrace look unbalanced, thus adversely affecting the visual amenity of the building and area generally. Indeed, when the front balcony for Mr. and Mrs. Davis was approved in 2016, French doors that were originally proposed had to be omitted because it disrupted the symmetry of identical facades. The insertion of a 1.8 metre high smoked glass privacy screen along the full length of the balcony, combined with the insertion of bifold doors with glazing changed from lattice windows to plain windows, would harm the appearance of the building to the front, as they are not common features to these identical properties. Loss of the distinctive arch-headed windows should also be avoided. Whilst front privacy screens have been installed elsewhere, as alluded to by the applicant, they have not been identical properties. The only example which is similar to number 70, but again, this is not comparable, as this was approved for a balcony only, with a half-length obscured glass privacy screen, not smoked, and with no changes to the front first floor doors or fenestration. With regard to the impact on the amenity of Mr. and Mrs. Davis, firstly, their outlook will be affected from their main living room. One of the main reasons why they purchased the property, and probably why many people did on the estate, is because the uninterrupted 180-degree outlook over the bay. This valued outlook will undoubtedly be affected by the erection of the screen along the entire depth of the proposed balcony. The way the balconies were originally designed on the front was to encourage social interaction between neighbours whilst enjoying a pleasant outlook over the bay, a feature of sustainable placemaking which the introduction of the screen would prevent. Reference is made by the applicant to Mr. and Mrs. Davis having permission for a privacy screen in their approved balcony plans. However, it is because they did not wish to restrict their neighbours' outlook that they did not proceed with this. Secondly, it is contended that a 1.8 metre high screen with dense smoked glass as opposed to obscured glass would appear overbearing, cause shadowing and loss of summer sun to their main living room. Therefore, again, it is the combination of factors and not just one sole reason which gives rise to the unacceptable impact of the amenity. All Mr. and Mrs. Davis wish to see is the original approved application implemented. I just hope the committee will agree and refuse the application. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for doing that, Mark. I'll just go now to all our members and ask them if they have any clarification they require on those points. Members, please wave at me, or those of you that are on audio, shout at me if you wish any points to be clarified. Mark, were you? Yeah. No, I'm not getting anybody asking for points of clarification. So, oh, Mark Wilson. Yes, Mark Wilson, would you like to come in? And after that, Andrew Parker. Mark, can you come in now, Mark? Oh, I've got to unmute you. Have I? Hang on then. Unmute, right. Mark, you should be able to speak to us now. No, we can't hear you, Mark. Have you unmuted?
Can you hear me now?
That's it. Yes, loud and
Wonderful. Clear. Okay, there's a couple of issues, right? What I want to know is how many houses on John Batchelor Way where this has taken place, because I don't know that. I don't think there's any at all, to be honest. That's the first point I'd like to have answered by the officers.
Mark, this isn't questions. This is clarification.
That's a clarification. To me, that's a clarification.
No. Well, I would.
Sorry, Chair.
Planning law,
yes,
does count quite a lot. All right.
So I want hang on a minute, Mark. I think we'll just debate that within the debate, if you don't mind, rather than just points of clarification.
That's all right.
So, Andrew Parker, you wanted to come in on clarification, please.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. I think my clarification, which relates to the doors, would be better dealt with by Vicky, to be honest.
Okay, well, we can deal with that in the debate then, thank you. So all told, we have no further points of clarification. Glad to see Gordon's back with us now. We will now, yes, hi Gordon. We will now go and ask Vicky to respond to the points raised by Mr. Peter. Vicky, are you happy to respond to those?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Hopefully you can all hear me again. I'm going to share with you, I think it might be useful if we share my screen again, because we've got some photographs of the street scene and other information that should be helpful. So hopefully you can see that, yeah? Okay, and so these are the proposed plans. You can see the balcony. So the application site that we're looking at is the one on the right as we're looking at these plans. And so they're proposing a balcony to match the one that's been put up next door. But as you heard from the representations, the concern is largely around the privacy screen that's proposed to be erected between the two. And as you can see from the map of the rising note, the applicant is keen that is erected to protect their privacy, not just in terms of the balcony, but their room as well there. If you have a look at the photographs, which I'm now showing on the site as well, I'll just find the one at the front of the property. So this is the application site. As we're looking at it, it's the property on the right, so you can see the existing balcony on the neighbour's property, and then the application site with the bifold doors that have been put in place already on the right-hand side. You can also see in that photograph that there are several other examples of balconies and screens further up and along this row. So there's already a little bit of a mix, and those of you that are familiar with Penarth Marina generally will know that there is a mix of different types of balconies and screens along there. As we also heard from those comments, there were some concerns about the changes to the elevation. So you can see the bifold doors that were being referred to, and that is obviously at a variance to the dwelling as built, which was a mirror image of its neighbour, and you can see the pair further along where they did used to have basically two separate individual doors, and now we've got full bifold doors along the front, shown in that photograph as well. And again, you can see further examples of balconies further up. So it is obviously a change to the elevations, and you know, that does have an impact. But we've obviously assessed that and considered that actually it would be unreasonable to refuse it on those grounds, given that there is already a variance and mixed street scene here and various different examples of screens and balconies. Same goes for the rear of the property. If I just refer back up to those photographs here, this is at the back of the application site, and you can see again there's a number of different balconies that have been erected over time since the development was first built, and various different types of screens. I think I would just also bring up the photograph when my officer went to site. I believe this is the neighbour who Mr. Peter was speaking on behalf of. I believe this is a photograph taken from their balcony, and them trying to indicate, you know, their impression of what the screen would do. And you can see, obviously, you know, they are concerned about their loss of view. We've heard reference to, you know, the properties being built with a 180-degree outlook of the marina. But members will obviously be aware that that right to view isn't a material planning consideration. We need to consider whether or not the screen as proposed would be unneighbourly, and obviously we've come to the assessment that we don't think it would be. That yes, you may be able to see it, but it's not going to unreasonably overshadow or affect their outlook. Sorry, Councillor Gray's just drawing my attention to the matters arising. I thought I had already addressed that. I did mention it. I mentioned it at the start. Sorry, I suspect it was when you were having some issues with your sound. But sorry, I'm getting a bit of feedback now. Yeah, so there is matters arising. Just to draw members' attention to that, that's a letter from the applicant which goes through the reasons why they want the screen and why they would like, why they feel that it's acceptable, and responding to some of the concerns that have been raised by neighbours. You know, they are obviously keen to have a screen to protect their privacy, and that's the purpose of it. I'll leave it there, I guess, for now, and take any questions or points that members want to discuss.
Okay, thank you, Vicky. Just before we move on to the debate, I will go to Gordon. Can we lose the sharing, Vicky, please? And ask Gordon, do you have a declaration of interest?
Yes, can you hear me, Chairman?
I can hear you loud and clear.
Good. I have a declaration of interest in the item you deferred to the end of the meeting, the land that myself funding in Bombleston, on the basis that I was a cabinet member and the decision was made to submit the planning application.
Thank you, Gordon. No other declarations?
No
Okay,
other at all.
right.
No.
Okay, so we've heard now Vicky talk about that, and I can see Councillor Neil Thomas is indicating he would like to speak. So I'll let Neil come in and ask his question. Neil Thomas.
Yeah,
please.
actually, it's first of all, I want to ask a question of Vicky on the on what she's just been speaking about. Can she show those photographs again? Because from what I could see, the images of the neighbouring properties maintained a certain symmetrical appearance. Not the one there. The ones of the neighbouring properties that retained. That'll do. No, yeah, that one there. Where are we? The ones that's that one there, for example. Although there's a bifold door, they've retained their arched windows, their separate arched windows, as has number 6. Now these are a couple further down the road. So they've retained their symmetricality to a larger extent than this present application. Mr. Peters made the point that when number 6 applied for the for their balcony changes and their proposal a few years ago, they were told that they weren't allowed French doors because that'd be too big an aperture and it would damage the symmetricality of the property. And yet this application is retrospective for something which wasn't in the original application. The work to the windows at the front, the work that's already been done to the windows at the front, don't actually reflect what has happened. Don't reflect what's on the plan. If you look at your plans again, they show an arch window either side of the bifold doors. The arch on the left of that in reality isn't there, so the application doesn't reflect what they've done. So there's serious problems and serious yeah, that's it. The left-hand arch window you can see there isn't, and the actual dimensions of that differ in reality. If you look at the photograph of that again, you'll see that it's very different from that plan. So we're actually being asked to approve plans which don't reflect the work that's been done and the reality of what they're doing. And given that these plans vary from those changes that have been made, and they seem to be misleading, and given that a similar application for large French windows was rejected by planning when number 6 made their application, I can't see how this committee can agree to support these recommendations now, because they're recommendations to supporting something which A, isn't the reality, and B, doesn't reflect and B, is inconsistent with a decision that was made just a few years ago. That'll do.
Oh, thank you. Vicky, do you want to come back on that, please?
Yeah, by all means, can you hear me? Okay, so obviously we have to determine the application in front of us. I think it's fair to say that our preference would be to retain the symmetry and to leave things as they were, but that's not the proposal that's in front of us. We have to assess, therefore, what the applicants want to do and whether or not that is acceptable in planning terms, or whether it's so harmful that we can refuse it. Now, I think we need to bear in mind that Penarth Marina has changed since it was built. This is not a conservation area, these are not listed buildings, and over time dwelling owners are going to want to change their properties to do things to suit their family life and so on. And I think that's a reflection of this. Would I prefer to see it staying the same and having absolute symmetry? I have to say yes, I probably would, but I'm saying that that's not good enough reason to refuse what is a change that is actually acceptable and not going to cause severe detriment to the street scene. It's going to change what the dwelling looks like, but if you look at all the different balconies and screens and so on that have changed over time, things cannot be frozen in time forevermore. So our conclusion is that those changes are acceptable. On the point of that the plans don't reflect what's been built on site, I think that's correct. What members here are considering are the proposals in the plans. If the applicant wants to retain what they've currently done and not introduce the archway, then that would require planning permission because it's different to the approved plans. But my understanding is that the applicant intends to implement the planning application that's in front of us. Obviously, they are sort of halfway through these works. They haven't put the balcony up either. They have implemented the garage conversion. So I think for now, members just need to focus on the application in front of us, and whether or not any future enforcement action needs to be taken is a different matter.
Thank you, Vicky. Okay, anybody else? Could we lose the screen share, please? I've got Mark Wilson and Andrew Parker indicating. I'll go to Mark first as it's a Penarth and then come to Andrew afterwards. So Mark Wilson, I need to unmute you. Okay, Mark.
Thank you very much, Chair. Okay, I will reiterate the point I was going to make about the fact that it seems to me an incongruous development in terms of where it is. I know there have been some changes going on. I'm also concerned about the view aspect to this application as well. And I'm also concerned about the kind of smoke screen, as it were. It's not a clear screen. I think the clear screen would go some way to alleviate the objections here to this application.
Okay, thank you, Mark. What I'll do, I'll ask Andrew to come in now and let Vicky sum up, or Marcus wants to sum up on that, I think. But we'll ask Andrew Parker now if he'd like to ask a question or make a comment, please.
Yeah. My question was actually very similar to Councillor Neil Thomas's. I'm looking on page 41 at what was the approved screen for the joining of the two neo-Georgian, because it's obviously a neo-Georgian building. The proposal to put the fold side door, I actually think damages the whole concept of the way that those things have been going, and certainly the screen underneath the balcony on the garage again introduces a more modern, for want of a better expression, word. And I think, in fairness, it would be sensible to actually allow for the pseudo-Georgian windows to remain, which would then unify the block. Regretfully, I haven't had a chance to see it because of lockdown, but I'd welcome Vicky's view. I understand that an appeal could be difficult, but it would be much better in my view if it was built as per the original approved scheme on page 41 and not on the new drawings, which basically just show the modern screen. So I welcome Vicky's view.
Okay, thank you, Andrew. Before I hand back to Vicky, we will ask if anybody else needs to answer any questions. No, nobody else on this one. So I think Marcus is going to speak on this, actually, not Vicky. Over to you, Marcus.
Thank you, Jonathan. Just to really sum up in terms of the sort of four key points that were raised by councillors there. Loss of view and the darkness of the screen, and then coming on to the design and the nature of the design in terms of the window. So in terms of view, no one is entitled to a view. The loss of that view is not a planning matter and could not be used to justify a reason for refusal. So you cannot refer to that. The darkness of the screen and the fact it's smoke glass as opposed to opaque glass will have very little difference in terms of its effect. Light will still pass through that. It's certainly not going to lead to any issues around loss of light, certainly not to the level where we would be concerned about recommending refusal. The design is important to note. These are, while it is neoclassical in design, it is a postmodern pastiche of a neoclassical design. It is not of particularly high quality in terms of its design. It's designed approximately very common in the late 80s, early 90s. There is certainly no architectural merit to preserve. Vicky has mentioned that while it would be better to keep its symmetry, that's certainly not a good enough reason to refuse it. These buildings, they're of an era. You've often heard me say in the past, use the word pastiche. They are a pastiche of an older design, but that is not a particularly, it's certainly not of a level where we'd be looking to preserve it. So I think at this level, there are no issues that have been raised that we would be able to justify on any grounds of reason for refusal. It would certainly lead to an appeal, and I think if it led to an appeal, it'd be very, very difficult to justify those grounds.
Thank you, Marcus. Okay, are there any further questions on this one? Right, we've had a good debate. I'm going to move officer's recommendation. Oh, Neil Thomas is just wanting to come back in. Neil?
Yeah, just to reiterate what I said before and to add to what Andrew said, this application has been through this committee, or applications for this property have been through this committee a number of times over the last few years, the most recent being 18, but then one in 17 that approved this one, the one that you can see, sorry, the one in 2018, you can see the one on page 41 of your brochure here. The applicants have actually gone ahead and built something completely at variance to the plans that they were approved. So we are seeing yet again a retrospective application, which is actually kind of holding this committee's feet to the fire. And personally, I resent that. You know my view. I've often given my views on retrospective applications, and I believe that this is yet another case where we are being forced to make a decision that would go against we wouldn't normally approve because of this. It doesn't fit in with the street scene, and I think that would have been our position had this come to us as a clean application.
Neil.
Yeah.
Neil.
So I'm opposing.
Yeah, that's fine. I'll come to you for your vote shortly. And we have this discussion every time. None of us like retrospective applications, but I'm afraid we have to deal with them. And we are where we are. This is the application that's in front of us. So I believe the Mark is just signaling he wants to chat to me. 2 seconds. I'm just going to. Okay, right, so back in now. I have moved. Do we have a seconder? Oh, Margaret is looking to come in. Margaret Wilkinson.
Can you hear me? Yeah. If Neil Thomas is going to oppose it, can I have Neil's reason why? Because if it's not a planning reason, I can't see where he can go with this. Thank you.
Thank you, Margaret. Well, he will have to come up with a reason if there is a refusal by the committee. But I think
incongruous from the street scene.
Okay, yeah. Well, we'll debate that if we need to get there.
It's a good planning reason.
Neil, I've given you your chance now. Andrew Parker wants to say something, please.
Yeah, really by way maybe of helping, and it's really for Marcus and Vicky to do it. On condition 2, it says that full scale 20 scale details should be submitted for the screen. Although I'm loath to suggest it, but it might get a side of an impasse that if we also included that the windows were in that screen, it would give the planners a chance to actually come up with a view which would not involve us in a refusal.
Okay, thank you, Andrew. Marcus or Vicky going to respond to that?
I mean, members, we are determining the application in front of us. I don't think you can condition something that is different to what's in front of us. I don't agree that what is in front of us, and retrospective or otherwise, is unacceptable. You know, it is a change to the front elevation of the property. That doesn't make it an unacceptable change. This isn't a listed building. It's not a conservation area. It's a mixed street scene with different house types, different balconies, different screens. I really don't think we're going to get anywhere in terms of an appeal on this, and we're not recommending it to you because it's retrospective. If these were the proposed plans, we would, and they hadn't carried out the works, we would still be recommending approval because we think it's acceptable in planning terms. I don't think it would be appropriate to be imposing a condition for different windows that you know, simply officers do not think is necessary in this case to make the development acceptable in planning terms.
Thank you very much, Vicky. I see Ben Gray is indicating. Ben, would you like to come in, please?
Thank you, Chair. Following on from you moving officer recommendations, I'd second that. I think if we go to a vote now and it then, we'll see what happens with the vote. We can discuss any other permutations, but I'll second officer recommendations. I noticed from the videos, sorry, the photos of the scene, another balcony with an opaque screen. It's not going to be a see-through privacy screen. It's always going to have an element of not seeing through. That's the principle of the privacy screen. I read the report, I read the matters arising, I've listened to the speaker, and I think I'm ready to make a vote. So I'm seconding your moving of officer recommendations.
Thank you very much, Ben. Right, so we've had a mover and a seconder. I will go for a vote. So as I described earlier in the day, I will come to you individually, and the question I am asking you, are you for or against officer's recommendation? So myself, I am for officer's recommendation. I will now ask Councillor Gray, are you for or against officer's recommendation?
For officer recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor Gray. I will now ask Rhiannon Birch, are you for or against officer's recommendation? Rhiannon? Let's try. Rhiannon, are you for or against officer's recommendation?
For the officer's recommendation.
Thank you, Rhiannon. Very good. Councillor Christine Cave, are you for or against the officer's recommendation?
For.
Thank you very much. Pam Drake, on the bottom of my screen, are you for or against the officer's recommendation?
For the officer's recommendation.
Thank you, Pam. Vince Driscoll. Where's Vince? Vince is in the middle. And are you for or against, Vince? Can't hear you. Thumbs up or thumbs down, Vince?
For the application.
For. I got that. Thank you, Vince. I did. For the officer's recommendation, yes? Lovely, thank you. We've had a thumb indicate as well. I can't see Stuart now, so I will need a clear answer from Stuart. Are you for or against, Stuart?
For.
Thank
Do you hear me,
Stuart.
John?
That was very. I can hear you loud and clear. Thank you. That
Okay.
was great. Thank you very much. Another one I can't see. Councillor Nick Hodges. Can you give us your reply for or against, Nick?
For the recommendation, Chairman.
Thank you very much, Nick. Ian Johnson, I can see Ian.
For the application.
Thank you, Ian. Lovely. Gordon Kemp, for or against?
For the application.
Thank you, Gordon. Andrew Parker, for or against?
For the application.
Thank you. Leighton Rowlands, for or against?
For the application.
Thank you very much. Neil Thomas. Neil? I can't hear you, Neil.
Sorry, yeah. Sorry, Mark. Sorry, John. Yeah, I'm against.
Okay, so you're against, Neil. Margaret Wilkinson, for or against, Margaret?
For.
Okay, thank you, Margaret. Eddie Williams.
For the application.
Thank you, Eddie. Mark Wilson. Mark, can you hear us? Oh, hang on. Try again now, Mark.
Thank you very much. I am against the application. Against it.
Yes, that's perfectly clear. Thank you, Mark. And Margarita, last but by no means least, are you for or against, Margarita?
For the application.
Okay, thank you. Right, that is a clear majority for the application. So that application passes and we will move on to the next application. Getting my agenda in front of me. It is 2019-01290 out, Time House, Regent Street, Barry. And I think Victoria is going to lead us through this again. So I'll mute myself and hand over to Victoria. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Hopefully you can hear me, indicate if not.
Yes,
okay, great. Right, this is an application at Time House, which is in Regent Street in Barry. The existing property is currently vacant, was last used as an office premises, and the proposal is in outline to demolish the existing building and construct a new two-storey building to the same height as the current building to house two-bedroom flats with a small area of shared amenity space at the back of the property and no on-site parking. We have received objections to this proposal from neighbouring properties and from Barry Town Council, and those are set out in the report. I'd also draw members' attention to the Matters Arising papers. At item number 3, page 48, we've had a further letter of representation from the public. The matters raised therein are already addressed in the report, issues such as parking and so on. I believe we have a public speaker on this, Chair. So, two speakers, perhaps? Yes. Yeah, we've got 2 speakers, so I'll come back after they've had their chance and if members have got any questions.
Okay, thank you very much, Vicky. Right, we will try and get hold of the public speakers now. Mark, do I need to do anything my end, or is that being done for me? The first public speaker is Mr. Kevin Irish, who is going to speak against the application. Kevin, yeah, you are unmuted. Can you hear us, Kevin Irish? Hello, Kevin Irish. Can you hear us? No. Kevin, can you hear us? No, I think we're going to have to revert to reading this out, I'm afraid. We do have a copy in case this happened, and it has happened. So, again, sorry, Mark, over to you. Could you read this out, please?
Not a problem, Chair. I believe Mr. Irish's microphone is on, but he might be having difficulties connecting. So, right. I'll just read these out now. From Mr. Kevin Irish, these are the notes I will be discussing at the meeting. If there's any objections, please let me know as soon as possible. Parking. Local residents competing with Gladstone Road, surrounding streets, i.e. Lower Regent Street, Lombard Street, etc. Park and ride, people parking and walking to Barry Docks train station. Town centre workers and shoppers. Local garage using Regent Street for customer vehicles. Large volumes of traffic, including ever larger business lorries, frequently damaging residents' vehicles in their efforts to negotiate the corners. A large building blocking an already limited amount of light to my garden and neighbour's garden. We also have concerns with privacy issues. external bin storage at the end of the garden, encouraging smells, rodents and associated diseases. If planning application is agreed, it will set a precedent for other similar buildings to be repurposed, exacerbating the pre-existing problems with parking. Yours sincerely, Mr. Kevin Irish.
Right, thank you, Mark. I can hear you now, Kevin, I believe. Can you hear us?
I can indeed, yes. There were a couple of other items I did. Hello?
Well, yes, just about hear you. Did you want to make another couple of quick points? Because
Right, there is a building opposite us of a similar persuasion, and that's been refused 3 times due to the same issue that we're discussing today. And if this one is agreed, then I'm afraid that there are several other buildings around this area that will be attempting to repurpose. And, you know, we believe that they've really tried to deceive the committee in the fact that they've put a high price on the building in an effort to stop it being sold so that they can repurpose it.
Okay.
My wife is disabled, and most of the time we can't get a parking space at all, even though we're on the corner.
All right, Kevin, I'm going to have to stop you there because I'm guessing that you've had a good 3 minutes with Mark reading out and whatever. If you just hang on there, I'm going to mute you a minute. I'm just going to ask for clarification from all my members. Okay, members, I can see Ben Gray is indicating. Ben, you have a point of clarification.
Thank you, Chair. My only clarifying point of the speaker is just to confirm the address of the application you're referring to as having been turned down a number of times. And maybe if you can't recall it, maybe Councillor Johnson's in a position to, but if you could just confirm which one you're referring to, that's my only clarification.
Okay, thank you, Ben. I will ask Mr. Irish now if he can confirm that. Mr. Irish, yes. Can you confirm?
Yes. The address is 168 Woodlands Road, and it's the building, it butts onto the back garden of our property.
Thank you very much indeed. Are any of our councillors now have any clarification? Ask Mr. Irish? No? Okay. I'm just going to mute a sec because I have a quick question. Okay, so we have another public speaker on this, and it's Mr. Kevin Reaney, who is, I believe, the applicant. Mr. Reaney, are you there? I am trying to unmute you. Yes. Oh, sorry. We're all having to do it. And yeah, Kevin Reaney, can you hear me?
Yes. Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman. I can hear you.
Lovely. Thank you very much. You're nice and clear. You have 3 minutes to say your piece. Please start now.
So brilliant. So good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen of the committee. I hope you can all hear me. My name is Kevin Reaney. I'm a director of South Wales Time Recorders. We provide time and attendance systems in the UK to local authorities and including the Vale of Glamorgan Council. I'm asking if you would consider approving our planning application for our previous offices located in Regent Street, Woodlands Road. We vacated the offices in March 2018 due to the building being unfit for our ever-expanding company. The building itself is very old with no damp proofing, poor insulation properties. We also started having Pantechnicon palletized deliveries with 35-ton vehicles. This brought the traffic to a standstill and was upsetting the locals. So we decided to move to the business centre in Barry. We placed the property on the market with Knight's estate agents commercial department, and despite their efforts to date, we've only received one interested inquiry that would not make a genuine offer without planning permission being in place. Unfortunately, now due to COVID-19 virus, our family's business is financially suffering and we're hemorrhaging money on a daily basis. If the committee was so kind to grant approval, I'm sure the building would be more attractive for sale to a developer and we could reinvest the proceeds of the sale back into the family business that has been in existence for 41 years and has 5 families dependent on its survival. The current building in Regent Street is a relative eyesore and unfit for occupation. The proposed development would be much more visually appealing and provide comfortable, affordable town centre location accommodation with ample parking. Just a quick point on the parking. We were approximately 4 to 5 vehicles Monday to Friday, 9 till 5, as well as the palletised delivery, as well as around 4 o'clock every day, a UPS van would collect all our parcels. So by us moving away from that property, we have alleviated some of the traffic problems. I therefore ask the committee to consider our application for approval, and I thank you for your time and allowing me to speak.
Thank you very much, Mr. Rainey. If you just hang on there, I will go to my members and see if there's any clarification needed on that. I'm looking around, I'm trying to make sure I see everybody. Councillor Gray, were you indicating then? No. Councillor Johnson? No. Okay, right, I will hand over to Vicky to respond then. Vicky, are you happy to respond? Thank you.
Yeah, by all means. I think if I can just share my screen a minute. Bear with me. Would help, okay. Sorry, I don't know what's happening there. You're not seeing anything at the moment. Just my desktop. Not open any emails. Bear with me a second. There we go. Okay, I'm gonna bring up the plans for this one so members can see it. So you can see on the screen in front of you, and obviously members on the phone, hopefully you've got the hard copy bundles, the site layout plan, which shows on the left-hand side, you've got the existing building on the site, and on the right-hand side, the proposed layout showing the 2-storey building for flats with the bin store area, and it's indicating an external staircase. They also submitted indicative layout plans for the 2-bed flats shown here, but as it's in outline, those details would obviously need to be considered in a later reserved matters application, but it's just to sort of give an indication of how the accommodation might work. We've also got some photographs here, so this shows the building currently on the site, which would be demolished. This is the side lane showing the side elevation of the existing building. This is a similar property opposite the site. And then this photo gives you a bit of a street scene for those of you that are not familiar with the area generally. It's these buildings front Regent Street, which actually is sort of the dwellings on Gladstone Road. Apologies, I'm not sure the name of the, I think it's Woodlands Road possibly, sorry, but they don't front onto this. So this, the application site and the one opposite is the sort of only coach houses that front onto the street as it currently is. And you can see from this, you know, everywhere in that area, it's on street parking. Existing houses on Gladstone Road and nearby rely on street parking in the main, and have there are, not on this part of Regent Street, but on the nearby residential streets, there are parking restrictions in place in terms of 2-hour waiting or resident permit parking. And I'm sure members are fully aware of this part of Barry. You know, parking is a bit of a premium, close to the town centre here, and at various times that, you know, the streets are going to be busy with cars. What we need to consider is whether or not in that location the exacerbation or any increase of parking would worsen the situation or cause a problem in terms of highway safety. Now, obviously, the existing established use there would have a degree of parking, as we've heard from the applicants just now, talking about their existing nature of the use that was there, with deliveries coming and going and staff parking and so on. The new flats would potentially have a parking requirement, albeit given that location, you could feasibly live there and not have access to a car. Members are familiar with these kind of debates and issues. We deal with these types of applications regularly, and parking is quite often cited as a reason, but you're also familiar with planning policy, which obviously talks about reducing the overall parking requirements, particularly in sustainable locations, the benefits of reusing brownfield land and so on. Matters that were also brought up by Mr. Irish related to impacts such as impact of light and potential overshadowing on his garden and properties, and those issues have been considered by officers. Obviously, the fact that there is already a building there and what's being proposed is a replacement building of the same height, then it's hard to argue that those impacts would be any worse than the existing building. There is a bin store proposed, and obviously the future residents would need to ensure that their waste is stored in a way to not cause a nuisance, just like any other residential property. The issue of precedent, I note that Councillor Gray asked the address, and Mark has done a quick search and wasn't able to find the relevant planning history referred to at that particular address. There isn't anything referred to in the report, but perhaps Councillor Johnson will be able to enlighten us on that one. But the issue of precedent, largely relates to whether or not you're considering something that is or isn't acceptable. Members are aware that we need to consider each planning application on its own merits. We've assessed this application. We've previously refused a proposal on this site. That doesn't mean that we thereafter have to refuse every proposal. If they've overcome the concerns, as they have done in this case, we are minded to recommend approval to members. Similarly, if another site elsewhere has been refused for sound planning reasons, that would continue to be the case regardless of granting permission here. We are looking at the planning merits of this application, this site, and these specific proposals. So hopefully that offers members some reassurance on the precedent issue. I think that's probably covered those issues, and obviously happy to respond to members' questions.
Okay, thank you, Vicky. Right, I think as I believe local ward member Ian would like to come in, and Eddie would like to come in after that. So I will hand over to Councillor Ian Johnson. Over to you.
Thank you very much, Chair. Thank you much to Victoria for the introduction there, and also to both Kevin's for speaking to the committee this evening. It was, I think, very interesting and useful to hear from the company themselves about the history of the site. However, as Victoria's alluded, the previous application for this site for four units on the same footprint has previously been refused. Barry Town Council have made an objection on the basis that they believe this is an overdevelopment of the site. I am inclined to agree. It is, to my mind, quite a postage stamp development in a highly urban area. In some cases, that might be considered a good thing. In this case, I think it's a bad thing, because it's the fringes of the town centre. It's at a location which is just beyond the traffic restrictions that go across Woodlands Road, streets that run from Halton Road.
Ian, we seem to have lost you. Are you there? No.
Can you hear me?
Can again now, Ian? Yeah.
Okay. Any idea where I dropped out of your hearing?
We got most of it. It was probably the last.
Well, you don't know where I finished.
No, I didn't know. I was being asked another question, actually. Sorry, Ian.
I was first referring to the car parking in the area. People hear that?
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So I was just going to say that this is the fringes of the Barry Town Centre area. It's just beyond the traffic order areas that run off from Halton Road to Woodlands Road. The specific issue with this stretch of road is actually not so much the parking, but the fact that it's used as a rat run between Gladstone Road and Woodlands Road, and the impact that parking has upon the area. So that is the problem that I think people face. The parking around there, it exacerbates the situation. My main concern is that it's an overdevelopment of a small site. I appreciate the context in which the owners are looking to sell the site and to gain planning permission. However, I still feel that that this 2x2 bed, similar to the 4x1 bed previous application, remains an overdevelopment of the site, and I can't support it in its current format. Thank you.
Thank you, Ian. I think I'll go to Eddie now, as he's indicated. We'll kind of get all the questions and let Victoria respond back to them, if that's okay with you. So over to you, Eddie.
Yeah, I'll be honest, my hand went up a bit early, but I will speak. Because the development has taken consideration from the original one where it was 4 single, now it's 2x2. The footprint isn't any larger and it's within the height. I don't really see, and also with the fact that the business said they had more traffic there or more parking, I think that'll be an improvement, not having so many cars there. I don't see any basis really to refuse. So on that basis, I would move the officer's recommendation.
Okay, thank you very much, Eddie. I see Andrew Parker indicating now. Andrew?
Yes, I've read all the conditions. There are 12 conditions which really will totally safeguard the nature of the development. Commercial developments like this really are now impossible to carry out. Even if it was a vacant site, the amount of money you'd have to spend to achieve a commercial return wouldn't work. So I happily second this. Predominantly residential area, and really that's the only use you could actually put this site to.
Okay, thank you, Andrew. We haven't, I know we've got a proposer and seconder, but Vicky, I think, would like to respond to Ian's, what is only right and proper that we have a bit of a debate on it. So I'll ask Vicky to respond to Ian, please.
Thank you. You know, parking is often an area that you know, people get very concerned about, especially in these kind of urban environments where parking is at a premium. You know, the surrounding streets all rely on street parking, but we are all well versed in planning policy and appeal decisions on this issue. Not least, we have to take account of the existing use and whether or not parking is already an issue there. Given that there is an existing use, it's not just a blank sheet in terms of the existing site, but not least the very sustainable location of this property. It's very close to the town centre. There's lots of shops and services close by, access to public transport, and therefore this is exactly the type of location where we can expect zero parking schemes to be acceptable. And I really don't feel that we would have any success whatsoever on a appeal against a refusal on those grounds. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you very much. So Ian, you want to come back on that, Ian?
Just briefly, Chair, not on the parking, but on the overdevelopment. I'm just wondering if Vicky could just very quickly go through the difference between this application and the previous application, which was refused.
Vicky, could you respond to Ian's?
Yeah, I believe the previous application was for a larger building. We now have a small area of amenity space being provided on site. It does fall short of our amenity space standards, which members will be familiar with, are set out in our supplementary planning guidance. But those are guidance, and for the purpose of these kind of sites in, you know, urban locations, brownfield sites which are constrained, we very often are looking at much lower levels of amenity space, and what we tend to accept in those situations is a minimum of some access to outdoor space for the purpose of bin stores, so that future residents can use those. You know, we're talking about small 2-bed flats here in an urban part of Barry. You know, on a site like this, we are not going to have the level of garden space that you would expect in suburbia, and it's simply unachievable on brownfield sites like that. And again, if we try to refuse an application on those grounds, I don't think we get very far in terms of planning policy. Sustainable reuse of brownfield sites in urban, very sustainable locations is what planning policy is looking to achieve. So I think they have just about met the minimum requirements here to be able for future users to have somewhere to store their bins and an outdoor access into it, which both flats would have access to. We need to make sure that that was followed through in a reserve matters application in terms of the access, but hopefully that deals with that issue.
Thank you very much. Mark Wilson has indicated he'd like to speak. Mark. No.
Chairman, Nick Hodges, can I have a go?
Yes, I'll let you in after Mark.
Yes, I'm in
Nick,
now. I'm in now. Okay, couple points. All right, couple points. On this commercial aspect here, I know I mentioned that one of the members, I think it's Councillor Parker, talks about the point that, this development could not be necessarily commercial. Surely it was a commercial development, and we don't know if COVID is transitory or not. We don't know. It could be transitory, and of course we've got to think about the future. I'm also slightly concerned, about the parking in this area. It's quite a busy area of Barry, and and I do have concerns about that. Clearly, about this. Having on the other side of this, of course, there's a huge demand for housing, as we know, almost everywhere in the Vale of Glamorgan.
Thank you, Mark. Anybody else now apart from Nick? Nick wants to come in. Nick, are you ready to speak to us?
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. I got a couple of points to make, really. Quite rightly, Council refused 4 one-bed flats for this site, but now we're being asked to approve 2 two-bed flats. Whether it was a smaller building or not, I don't think there'd be probably much difference in that. I'm rather upset by a comment by Vicky, actually. We wouldn't expect garden space to be like if it was in suburbia. Well, this is inner town Barry, and some of the gardens in the houses surrounding this area have very large, very nice gardens. Thank you very much. Back in the time when planning committees actually created living spaces for people. Now, what I will say is that parking is an issue in this town. That road there is a rack run. It connects up and cuts through some of our major roads in the town. And this building, I do not feel, has been fully exploited as to any future business possibilities. And I feel that whilst we may be very good in this council at housing people, we're very bad at allowing people to be employed in this town. And I am concerned that we're losing potential business opportunities. That's all I got to say, Chairman.
Thank you very much, Nick. You came through loud and clear. Anybody else like to come in on this before I ask Vicky to respond? No? Okay, Vicky, would you like to respond to Nick and Ian's comments, please? Thank you.
Yeah, thanks. Apologies, I didn't mean any offence with my comments about suburbia. I was just meaning greenfield sites on the edge of settlements, the type of new housing schemes that we are looking at. Obviously, those provide a degree of garden space that you can't possibly achieve when you're looking at a constrained site in an urban area like this. So apologies, I didn't mean to infer anything else than that. On the issue of the current employment use, or the last employment use, if I can refer members to page 55 of the report where this issue is addressed in some detail. The planning application was submitted and supported by evidence from local estate agents who have been trying to market the property. It has been vacant. The previous unit had been occupied by that business since 1988, and when they vacated the premises in March 2018, it has been vacant ever since. They've been marketing the property since September of that year and haven't been able to secure a future user. we do have policies to protect employment uses, but where applicants have taken reasonable steps to find an alternative employment use and none have come forward, then that is precisely the justification required to consider alternative uses. We can't expect those kind of premises to just remain vacant indefinitely, hoping that at some point the market for that type of unit picks up. Particularly when the proposals for what is being proposed here is acceptable in its own right as a residential use, and for the reasons set out in the report, we've obviously come to the conclusion that 2 flats here is acceptable in terms of the level of parking, the level of amenity space, and so on. So again, I wouldn't feel comfortable recommending that you refuse the application because of the loss of the employment site. The issue of the impact of the current pandemic, at this stage, I think it's too early for us to say as to whether or not that is going to change planning policy about the level of office space requirement across the Vale of Glamorgan. You know, we will be considering those issues and reviewing that as time goes on now in the next few months and years, in fact, as to whether or not this pandemic changes how we look at employment proposals and protection of employment uses. But right now, I don't think is the time to be doing that and paying too much material attention to that. But that doesn't take away from the fact that they have been trying to sell this property for employment purposes and haven't been able to, and therefore, you know, we can't retain that forever. So I think that addresses those points made. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you very much. Okay, so we have had it moved and seconded. I don't think anybody else wants to come in on the debate, so I will do like last time. I will ask for your vote, whether you are for or against officer's recommendation. I'll start the ball rolling and I will say that I am for. I will go now to Councillor Ben Gray. Are you for or against, Ben?
Chair, I'm for officer recommendations. I'd also make you aware on the chat that Councillor Driscoll's lost his connection to this, so obviously won't have heard all the arguments. But I'm for the motion, officer recommendations.
Okay, thank you. Thanks for that. Councillor Rhiannon Birch, are you for or against Rhiannon? Rhiannon?
For the officer's recommendation.
Thank you, Rhiannon. That was for the officer's recommendation, yes? Thank you. Councillor Christine Cave.
Yes, for officer's recommendation.
Thank you, Christine. Councillor Pamela Drake, please.
For the officer's recommendation.
Thank you very much. Councillor Driscoll has dropped off, and as he hasn't seen all of the debate, I don't believe he would be able to vote. So I will now ask Stuart Edwards, who hopefully is hearing us loud and clear. Stuart, can you hear us?
I am, John. Yeah, full recommendation.
Thank you very much, Stuart. Loud and clear. Councillor Hodges.
Against, Chairman.
Thank you, Nick. Councillor Johnson.
Against.
Councillor Gordon Kemp. Gordon, I didn't catch that. Is that a for or against?
He's offline as well, John.
Okay, Gordon, I don't know if you can hear us or not. We can't hear you, but if you could give me a thumbs up or a thumbs down. No?
Can't hear that either.
Oh dear. Okay, Councillor Andrew Parker, can you tell us?
Yes, for officer's recommendation, Chair.
Councillor Parker, thank you. Councillor Leighton Rowlands.
For the recommendation.
Thank you, Leighton. Councillor Neil Thomas.
For.
Okay, Councillor Margaret Wilkinson.
For the recommendation.
Councillor Eddie Williams. You proposed it, so I'm guessing you're for it.
For the recommendation.
Thank you. Councillor Mark Wilson.
Against the recommendation.
Thank you, Mark. Councillor Margarita Wright.
Yes, 4.
Thank you. Okay, we do have a clear majority, even though we have a couple of votes not on there. So that again passes the planning permission for Regent Street. So we will now move on to the next application, which is Craiger Orsog Morboi C. We do have 2 public speakers on this as well. So I will hand over to Vicky. Oh, no, Marcus is going to do this one. I can't see Marcus because he's the other side of my screen. I suppose I can see him in the screen. So he's going to lead us into this, and then we'll hear from the speakers. Thank you, Marcus.
Thank you, Jonathan. Thank you, Chair. This is an application for permission to convert the attic and extend the garage at 20 Craiger Avenue. The garage is to be increased by size by around 28 metres square and lengthened by 3.2 metres, extending out from the current elevation towards the boundary with Gareham Moor. A section approximately 2 metres by 3.5 metres in size will project from the western side of the elevation of the garage, extending into the rear garden of number 20, which is the application property. A hipped roof would be replaced with a gable roof as a result, and the eaves height of around 2.9 metres with a maximum ridge height of approximately 6.3 metres, which is 1 metre higher than the current ridge height. Just for clarification, we have had 5 objections to the scheme, and the primary issues in relation to this and the objections are in relation to whether the proposed garage and extension will acceptably harm the amenity of the street scene, amenity and character of the street scene, and the character of the heritage coast, and the impact of the extension on the amenity enjoyed by the neighbours. And having consideration of those, the application is recommended for approval.
Okay, thank you, Marcus. I believe Vince is back with us now. Vince, yes, you okay? You can hear us, Vince? Yeah, so he's back in on this debate. So over to the public speakers now. I just need to make sure they can hear us. I'm getting a bit of an echo. I think that's better. The echo's gone. So the first speaker is Mr. Chris Beale, who is against. Mr. Beale, are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
Thank you very much. Right, you will have 3 minutes from now, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good afternoon, committee. Tusker's Point development was completed about 2.5 years ago. It was skillfully designed to offer an open outlook upon the Glamorgan Heritage Coast. The original site plans were rejected a number of times until they offered both a lower visual impact and consistency from both the coast and from the street side. We have discussed the proposed design with the architect of the original development of Tusker's Point, and I quote, "The architects were specifically advised by the planning department to move plots 12 and 13, that's the applicant's plot, away from the site boundary due to concerns over dominance over and loss of daylighting to the adjacent bungalow Gareham Moor. This is demonstrated by the typical relationships of houses on the development to other boundaries around the site, which are typically 1 metre. That relationship was considered unacceptable in respect to plots 12 and 13, and a separation of 5 metres was demanded. The proposed application makes no attempt to maintain any boundary separation, which is reduced to 0.5 metre, with an increased ridge height and overbearing gable end, replacing the open aspect of an existing hipped roof. The Planning Committee report on page 75 rightfully identifies that the main issues to consider are the impact of the development on the following: the appearance and the character of the property, street scene, Glamorgan Heritage coastline, and effect on neighbouring properties. Several criteria have been quoted in this report as a measure of the impact of these factors, and a number of subjective arguments have been made to suggest that these have been met. I would strongly argue otherwise. For example, to argue on page 76 that the development, I quote, continues to appear demonstrably subservient to the main house is questionable. Referring to the proposed front elevation on page 70, this is clearly not true. This is also supported by the photographic impression from our property. This should be included as agreed in the site photographs discussed previously. Similarly, the orthographic 3D view of the proposal on page 70 shows the garage extension that can hardly be called subservient. Another point to note, which indicates the applicant's inappropriate desire to overdevelop the site, is the proposed side door. There would not have been the clearance to open it. I respectfully hope that the committee will also agree that the scale of the proposal will be out of proportion and dominate the adjacent bungalow Gurry Moor as seen from the coast path. Several neighbouring properties have objected on the basis of a loss of outlook, which clearly goes against the original design aim for Tusker's Point. However, I feel most strongly about the proposal, which destroys our outlook from both the front and the rear of our property. Finally, there is no mention of how the rainwater drainage will be addressed. This runs down from the properties above and through the gap between Gurry Moor and plot 12 and 13. After the applicant's previous excavations associated with the development of an outbuilding, final sentence, these are no longer...
Mr. Beale, your 3 minutes is up, I'm afraid. Sorry to cut you off, but we have to be fair with everybody that they get a flat 3 minutes. So what I will do now is ask our members, do they have any points of clarification they would like to ask? Members, any points of clarification? No? Okay, thank you. So that brings us on to Mr. Robert Tate. Mr. Robert Tate, I will try and... Mr. Tate, can you hear us?
Yes, Chairman, I can. Hopefully you can hear me. Good afternoon and good afternoon to the committee. My objection... I'm sorry?
Sorry, Mr. Tate, loud and clear, away to go, thank you.
Okay. My objection to the proposed planning application is that it will have a detrimental effect to the street scene envisaged by both planners and the developer of the original Craigereos Avenue planning application. As the previous objector has outlined, much care was requested by the committee at that time and delivered by the developer to ensure a development both in keeping with the neighbourhood and the nature of a coastal site. This meant practically in definition in detail of the proposed housing, its placement, its elevation, its finishing, to ensure that development did not dominate and the feel of the site overall was of space and light, even though the properties themselves were of significant size. This was achieved to the extent that many existing residents of Ogmore, I see, have commented favourably on the outcome. I believe the proposed application has a significant detrimental effect to this street scene. Its front size and mass placed at the visual end of the approach into Craigereos Avenue will deliver a visual block. It will dominate the skyline by its mass and change the feel of development to one of enclosure, not at all in keeping with the original consent. I think it is also reasonable to mention that the same effect will, in my opinion, be apparent in viewing the proposed extension from the coastal path, again to the detriment of the existing street scene and visual amenity. I hope, therefore, for this reason, that the committee will reject the application. However, should it be minded to accept the application, I hope that significant attention will be given to ensure the finish of the proposed development. Its external colouring, its window design, its roofing, all should be constrained to match precisely with the existing design and materials. That's not always clear in the proposed plans. As a committee, you have the opportunity to ensure that the quality of this development is maintained, and I hope, therefore, that you will reject this application. Thank you for your time, Chairman.
Thank you very much, Mr. Tate. I will mute you now, and I will ask our committee if anybody needs anything clarified. I don't see any hands up, and I don't hear anybody asking, so I will ask Marcus to come back on those points raised. Marcus.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, so I'll summarise some of the points. The key issue was view both from the properties and obviously the impact the proposal would have on the Heritage Coast. and the street scene in general. So just dealing with those issues, in terms of the view, unfortunately, as we talked about before in a previous scheme, no one is entitled to a view, and therefore loss of an extension creating a loss of view for a property behind is not a reason to recommend refusal. It is true to say this was quite a well-designed development that went through a number of stages of negotiation before it was accepted. But it's also true to say, as we also discussed earlier, that no development is stuck in aspect. So the fact that it was designed as a whole to try and minimise its impact doesn't mean that properties can't therefore be extended in the future. This extension is relatively low key, as the report details. It is being designed to mirror the design of the house itself. It does come relatively close to the boundary with neighbours, but officers have spent a considerable amount of time looking at the impact of those extensions on neighbouring properties and consider that the impact is not sufficient to merit refusal. Indeed, it also is, when viewed from the Heritage Coast and the footpath, is not considered that it will have a detrimental impact on any of those locations and in terms of the view of the site as a whole. So your officers are recommending approval. I think I pretty much covered all the points there. I think one key issue that was raised by one of the speakers was around materials, and we would obviously be seeking to ensure that materials do match the existing properties.
Thank you very much.
Just one other point, Chair, just to mention that one of the speakers referred to the masses arising on a 3D image that's there, just to make sure members are aware that there is on page, the last item on masses arising, there is a 3D artist impression submitted by one of the neighbours of what we feel the garage extension would look like.
Yeah, I think Vicky's trying to get it up on screen for us as we speak. It's sideways, but you need to count your heads. Oh, it's upside down. There you are. That's it. Lovely. Thank you, Vicky. Good technical skills there. Okay, I will ask Stuart Edwards, as he is the local member, if he would like to speak first. So, Stuart, would you like to speak?
John. Yes, thanks. Thank you, Chair, for the opportunity to speak. I was the ward councillor that called it in. I have, unlike all the other members, had the opportunity to visit the site on several occasions, and I would like to support the two objections from the two speakers here this afternoon. I won't elaborate on it because I think they did a pretty good job on making their case. And while I have the greatest respect for our planning officers and their recommendations, I feel that planning criteria is mainly based on diagrams, distances, angles, etc., and does not take enough consideration about how it affects close residents and neighbours. This application will spoil the outlook, reduce the amount of light and view from particularly the upstairs in number 18 and number 19 of Craigierios, and is also very close to the adjoining bungalow, Gerrimore, which will have an overbearing effect on the property. Also, one of the speakers mentioned it will be not in keeping with the existing street scene. So on the basis of that, I will be opposing the officer's recommendation. Thank you, John.
Thank you very much, Stuart. I've got Councillor Ben Gray has indicated he would like to speak next, so I'll ask Councillor Gray to come in.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to thank the members of the public for taking the time to bear with us in this virtual meeting and make their representations. I've also had the opportunity to visit the site, did so the last couple of days. I think that the matters arising picture is really useful when we look at it, and I can certainly see how a view would be interrupted, but bearing in mind, having seen the elevations, this house is further up the slight hill. I can't necessarily see the arguments about light being affected from where the light's coming from, mainly the sky. I think in terms of the officer recommendations, I'd like to move those officer recommendations, recognising that view isn't something protected by planning law as much as I'd like it to maybe be. I know we've had previous applications in Ogmore by Sea where we've had the similar conflicting interests, of course, and I can certainly see how people would have, the views they have. But based on the report, having read the report, looked through all the plans, visited the site myself, listened to the arguments put forward today, I will move off to recommendations.
Thank you, Councillor Gray. Anybody else like to come in on this? Yes, Councillor Neil Thomas.
Yeah, literally just a quick question. During the course of the debate so far, the objectors, one of the objectors mentioned the side door being so close to the boundary that it wouldn't, the proposed side door, that it wouldn't be able to open. Can officers sort of clarify that, please?
I'm sure they will do their best to. We're just frantically looking at some plans. Mark, you indicating something to me? No? Oh, that's fine. While Vicky's looking at that, Councillor Parker has indicated he'd like to come in on this. Councillor Parker.
Yeah, I'm just going to say, if you look on the existing floor plan, it looks as though the existing door, it's an existing door anyhow. I take clarification on that, but it looks as though the door's already in place.
Thank you, Andrew. We will see now. Yeah, we'll come back to you very shortly.
Yeah, if I come in now, it isn't. There may be a door there now, Andrew, but it's obviously this is an extension, so it's a replacement door in a similar location on the extension. The view of officers is that it can be opened. There is a limited gap there. It's probably about the width of the door where it would touch the fence, so approximately just under a metre. At the end of the day, that we do consider that the extension itself can be accommodated. If that doorway weren't able to open, they'd have to replace it, and it would be a non-material amendment to the scheme anyway. But my view, there is a gap. The site plan shows a gap there. Officers' photographs show a gap. So I think we would take the view that it can be accommodated, and if it can't, they'll just have to redesign their scheme.
Okay, thank you, Marcus. Members and attendees, could I make sure that you all mute when you're not speaking, please? We're getting some background noise and talking in the background. Not quite sure where it's coming from. Hang on, I've got Ian Johnson wanting to come in. Ian.
Thank you, Chair. I'm just clarifying on that side door. There's a note on page 79 of the report that says it is also noted that the plans indicate a ground floor door opening that would face the boundary with this neighbour. I'm referring to Garamore. Given that this door would be unusable due to its distance from the boundary wall, the agent has confirmed that this door would not be installed. Is that the same door that's being referred to here, or is that something entirely different that I've got confused with on this?
Marcus,
that sounds right. If you look at the distances, it is very tight. So I imagine that is the right door.
Okay, so it seems we're fighting over something that's not going to happen anyway on this one. Anybody else like to come in on the debate? I'm going to move. I'm going to second Ben's movement of the officer's recommendation, and if there's nobody else would like to come in, I will take it to the vote. Okay, Stuart, you don't want to come back in before I take it to the vote?
No, I'm fine, Sean. No, I'm fine. I'm ready to vote.
Okay, thank you very much, team. So I will kick this off, and as I seconded it, I will say that I am for the officer's recommendation. I will ask my Vice Chairman, Councillor Ben Gray.
For the officer recommendations.
Thank you. Rhiannon Birch, please.
For the officer's recommendations.
Thank you, Rhiannon. Christine Cave.
Yes, for recommendations.
Thank you, Christine. Pamela Drake.
For the officer's recommendation.
Thank you, Pamela. Vince Driscoll.
Against the officer's recommendation.
Stuart Edwards.
Against officer recommendation.
Thank you, Stuart. Councillor Hodges, Nick Hodges.
For.
For, that was, Nick, just to clarify, yes?
Yes. For.
Thank you. Ian Johnson.
For the officer's recommendations.
Thank you very much, Ian. Councillor Gordon Kemp.
Against.
Against, thank you. Councillor Andrew Parker.
For officer's recommendation, Chairman.
Thank you very much. Councillor Leighton Rowlands.
Against the officer's recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor Rowlands. Councillor Neil Thomas.
Yeah, for the recommendations. Problems unmuted.
Thank you, Neil. Thank you very much. Councillor Margaret Wilkinson.
For the recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor Wilkinson. Councillor Eddie Williams.
For the recommendation.
Thank you. Councillor Mark Wilson.
For the recommendations.
Thank you, Mark Wilson. And lastly, Margarita Wright. Councillor Margarita Wright.
Against the recommendation.
Okay, thank you very much. So we have a clear majority again for the officer's recommendation. There were 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 votes against, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 votes for. Okay, so that brings us to the end of that application, and that moves us on to the Mice of Funnan application, which I have declared, and I believe Gordon Kemp, Councillor Parker and Councillor Wilkinson have declared. So we will be leaving you. I will leave you in the trusty hands of my Vice Chairman, Ben Gray. Thank you all for putting up with me and bearing with us all on this first one, and hope to see you all very soon.
Thank you, Chair. I'll assume the chair now. Thank you to those members who are leaving us. I'll just give it a few moments. Councillor Driscoll, you've got something to say? Yeah.
Just a point. As these people are leaving, were members of a previous cabinet, shouldn't the current members of the cabinet leave the meeting as well? Wouldn't the same reason apply?
No, the cabinet voted on that decision. The decision's never come to the full cabinet, but obviously as the cabinet member responsible for housing, that's why Margaret's not in it for this current reason. Basically, I've never been involved with any decision as a cabinet member currently in this application, and I'm not the cabinet member responsible for housing. Does that help answer your question?
Yeah, fair comment. Okay.
All right, mate. Okay. I think everyone who's leaving is left. Can I ask someone to turn off Councillor Wilkinson's connection, please? Okay, I believe we're still quorate for a meeting, having lost so many people. I'm going to introduce the next planning application, which is 2019/01031/RG3, land to the north of Meistervennen, Bonvilston, and Vicky's going to introduce this one, and then we will have one public speaker. Vicky, please.
Thank you, Chair. So this is on page 1 of the report. The application is for 10 affordable social rented homes in the village of Bonvilston. It is within the settlement boundary, and the proposal, I'm sure you'll be aware, is part of the council's house building programme. and the application relates to 10 dwellings consisting of 4 two-bedroom houses and 6 one-bedroom flats, albeit these are proposed in quite a traditional story layout. If I can just share my screen with you and show you some of the plans. Bear with me. Okay, so you can see here the site edge red includes an area of open space which fronts the existing dwelling on Maesyllyffynnon. Here is the site layout proposed. So you can see the units are proposed in 4 blocks in total, with parking arrangement to the front in a turning head at the end of Maesyllyffynnon. The proposals include widening the existing cul-de-sac arrangement there and improving the access. Hopefully you can see on the screen at the moment the house type proposals, and members on the phone should have also received these in hard copy form or bundled with the plan, so hopefully you can see them. Got here the different house types. You can see they're quite traditional house types to reflect the existing houses within the street scene, and we've also got some perspective views of the proposals shown on the screen at the moment. Something's gone missing. There we go. Just taking a while to load. I've also here got some photographs of the site. For those of you that haven't had the chance to have a look at the site, this here is the entrance into the existing cul-de-sac. Then photo 2 is essentially looking northwards, showing the site as it currently is. It used to house some garages which have been demolished, and so it's now largely an area of green space with the remaining hard standings and parking spaces where the garages once were. As you can see, there are several trees on the site. Those matters are addressed in the report. There will be some loss of trees on the site, but an appropriate replanting scheme is proposed and to be conditioned with an appropriate landscaping scheme. Obviously, if members want to come back to view any of these proposals as we're going through the debate, please let me know and I can bring them back up onto the screen. This photo just shows the existing entrance into Maesyllyffynnon. This is the lane then that leads to the north past the site. Okay, I'm going to stop sharing the screen and just draw members' attention to the rising rates. We've had comments from Ian Perry, who's Community Councillor on St Nicholas and Bombleston Community Council, who is here to speak in a moment as well. You'll see there is quite a lot of submissions there that has been circulated to members, so hopefully you've had the opportunity to read through the concerns that are being raised there throughout that correspondence that has been addressed in the office report, and I'll be happy to take any questions on that as we go into the debate, or if members have any points of clarification when we've heard from Mr Perry, who's going to be speaking next. I think I'll leave it there.
Thank you, Vicky. Can I see if we've got Ian Perry on the line? I think you're just being unmuted now, sir. Can you hear me? Hello, it's Ian. Are you there?
Hello.
Hello, sir.
Can you hear me? Hello.
I can hear you. Thank you. When you start talking, after I finish letting you talk now, you will have 3 minutes, but in case you hadn't heard there, planning officers has just made us aware of all the various submissions you've made that are part of Matters Arising, and all members have seen those as well. So you will have 3 minutes to make your case. Thank you.
Okay. Planning permission has been granted and work has begun at Cotterell Gardens in Bombleston on a new development that will provide 80 new dwellings for social rental. There's no urgency for this planning application to be determined. Some information was not available on this until 16th of March 2020. The Community Council has held 3 EGMs which have been packed with concerned residents. The proposed 10 dwellings will replace the village green. The Residents Association and Community Council are acting jointly to officially register this village green in Bombleston. The Community Council has resolved to spend significant public money on legal support for the application of a village green. In the 2013 LDP background document on open space, Bombleston was subject to additional analysis of existing open space provision. Whilst there was an excess of sports space in the Wenver ward, the report states, and I quote, "There is no outdoor sport provision within Bombleston itself." Further, the report says that there was an under provision of children's play space in the Wenver ward at that time. The 2013 report also stated that there was an under provision of open space in Bombleston specifically, and recommended additional outdoor sports space and children's play space in Bombleston for the existing households. The Cottrell Gardens development makes outdoor space provision using the FIT benchmark standard. Provision has been made for the 120 dwellings of Cottrell Gardens plus 26 windfall dwellings. More than 30 other windfall properties are already in the planning stages at Bombleston, Miser Funun, and these 10 bring this to 40 windfall dwellings. The open space at Cottrell Gardens is insufficient in area to compensate for the loss of this village green. The alternative play spaces in the Wenvo ward are at Dufferin Gardens, which is 2.6 miles away, the Wenvo village, which is 5 miles away, or St Nicholas, which is still 1.8 miles away. New house sales at Darren Farm in Cowbridge have been slow, and only 8 of the 120 dwellings at Cottrell Gardens have reservations against them. Will COVID-19 make matters worse? When will the public open space at Cottrell Gardens be provided? And perhaps that will never be. The design of the proposed dwellings also needs to be reconsidered due to COVID-19. 6 of the dwellings would share 2 small outdoor amenity spaces. This would make quarantining and isolating particularly difficult for residents in the event of another public health lockdown. Plot 2 has a garden of insufficient size for a couple with a child. All the gardens north facing and the street to the front is dominated by parking, despite planning policy against this. The layout makes navigation extremely difficult for people with disabilities, particularly the blind, partially sighted, and those with wheelchairs or mobility scooters, for which there seems to be no parking. This design also goes against many council policies on inclusion, equality, and the well-being of residents. The urban design encourages pavement parking, and there is a shortage of parking. The road.
Thank you, Councillor Perry. That's your 3 minutes up, I'm afraid. So I'll pause there, and I will. Can I ask if there are any councillors who, any members of the committee, who have any questions of clarification to raise a hand? Indicate. No, in which case, thank you, Mr. Perry. There won't be any questions. Oh, there's one clarification. Is it clarification of the speaker, Councillor Wilson? If it's for the main debate, we'll cover it in a bit if it's with planning officers, okay? All right, thank you, Mr. Perry. Just to clarify, that was you speaking as a local resident on this case. Vicky, you want to come back, please?
Thank you. Yeah, I'll just mention the issue of the village green application is addressed in the officer's report. I'm just trying to find the section. I think it's page 24, as this is obviously raised in various letters of representation. That is a separate process to the planning process, neither fetter the other. So that is still under consideration and shouldn't be used as a reason to refuse planning permission. The consideration of the issues of loss of open space are planning matters and have been addressed in the planning officer's report. So just to clarify that point. The report does allude to the open space provision. So this application does obviously result in, to a certain extent, some loss of open space, and that is amenity open space. As I referred to, this site used to be used as garaging and hard surfacing. So quite a fair part of the site is actually wouldn't be classed as open space, but some of it would be, and that's set out in the report. But Mr. Perry has referred to levels of open space provision and the LDP background papers relating specifically to outdoor sport space and children's play space. The site as it currently stands is neither outdoor sport space or children's play space. Can others still hear me? Do you want to pause, because we won't be able to continue if you can't hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
The chair is just currently having a slight technical difficulty with his device. If members can just be...
You're buffering a little bit.
Okay, I think it may be Councillor Gray's system. He's just going to move. He can obviously hear me because he's in the room. So well, I'm just going to bear with me. He can hear. You can hear now, Ben. Okay. We can't see you at the moment, I don't think, Ben. So. Okay, I found you. There's so many people on the screen, it took a while to locate you. Okay, fine. Sorry, I've lost my chain of thought. Right, I was talking about the loss of the open space. Mr. Perry was referring to provision for outdoor sports space and children's play space. This development itself doesn't generate a loss of those types of open space. Nevertheless, there is obviously some degree of need created by 10 new dwellings. And as was alluded to, there has been provision made on the allocated site at Cottrell Gardens for not only to deal with the outdoor sport and children's play requirements of that site itself, but also for wider windfall developments. We're satisfied that when you balance the issues around the need for the provision of affordable housing and the benefits in terms of this development proposal, that when you balance that against the level of provision in Bombleston, that they are actually, there is adequate provision locally to meet the demands generated from the development, not least the remaining area of incidental open space that's within the application site and that's shown clearly on the block plan that is due to be retained, and that will obviously go to a certain extent to provide some local amenity green space immediately outside the development. There was also some reference to the provision of amenity space and garden space to serve these units, and again that's addressed fully in the officer's report. Some of the dwellings do fall slightly short of the council standard, but nevertheless they all have an area of space for clothes drying, bin stores, etc. And as I've alluded to, there is some outdoor space immediately outside as well that would help to meet those needs. So we feel that the scheme actually works well in terms of its density and offers a good opportunity to provide affordable housing in this area, and is a good scheme on the whole that reflects the correct density and layout for this context and this site. I'll hand over to you, Chair, for any members' questions.
Thank you. I had Councillor Wilson indicate and then Councillor Johnson, and then I'll go to Councillor Cave. So I'll start with Councillor Wilson. If you can make all your points at the round of three, unless there's any really pressing, then I'll get Vicky to come back on those. So Councillor Wilson first, please.
Thank you very much, Chair. I've got a few points on page 3 of the report, about the amended applicant's documents. Each house will have its own back garden, versus the flats will have a shared garden. Obviously, one of the issues at the moment with shared gardens is obviously, you know, a tight space here. And I wondered, obviously, is there a way we can mitigate that? The other point is then the two previous bullet points on the junction of the cul-de-sac, visibility and easy access for emergency service vehicles. Have we got any dimensions on that at all? I'd be interested to see on that. The other issue is trees. Is it possible we could replace some of those trees elsewhere? Because we're losing 8 trees by this application, and obviously we're going to be removing mature trees. So is it possible we could build trees elsewhere, perhaps, to look at that, to mitigate that fact? If you now go on to page 7, it says public rights of way and any damage to the surface is made good at their own expense. I take it that's the applicant. What sort of timeline do we have on that, clearly? And will there be a diversion route as well if they do affect the public right of way? That's another issue. The drainage section, there's a bit of an issue with the drainage, especially about the foul. Although you say it's not a planning matter, I'm quite aware of that. But clearly, you know, it's something worth thinking about, it's about the capacity and what sort of discussions will there be probably under reserved matters. Ecology officer with the bats, quite happy with that, but I think they still need probably more surveys to find out if there's any more bats or any other wildlife in the area that could be damaged. And also when we start the works, so we reduce the impact upon the ecology. Natural resources wells, okay, licensing tests set out. What are these tests? I don't know what they are. Okay. I think that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wilson. I will give the officers a chance to go through that list and ask the other two indicators to make their points. I would ask all members, if there's anything you don't understand in reports, to make contact with planning officers ahead of the meeting, so you're fully aware of the issues, but I'll clearly get the planning officer to come back on those
Very
questions
difficult
for you,
contact
Councillor Wilson.
officers at the moment, I can assure you, very difficult and quite understandable.
If there's an email that hasn't been answered, we can certainly look into that. If you mute up, and I'll get Councillor Johnson to make his points, please. Councillor Johnson.
Thank you, Chair. I think Councillor Wilson made a lot of points there, so I think the officer is going to be busy responding to these things. I've got a couple of quick points I want to make, which are hierarchical in order. My first point really is that this was originally the opening item on this agenda, and there's a question that I have about the timing of this. We were being told in general that we would be discussing matters that were time sensitive, and this to me is not a matter which is time sensitive, but it is a matter which is controversial. Once houses are built, they are built for a long time. I'm not quite sure why this has come to this committee in this way, when there is clearly going to be a delay in putting shovels in the ground, if nothing else because of the need to make a decision on the village green. I wanted to just get some clarification regarding the village green application, which, as you say, is on, I think, page 24. Now, the Vale of Glamorgan is the registration authority for village greens. I'm fairly sure that as a member of the licensing committee previously, I sat through and made a decision on the Sully's village green. And where I'm concerned here is that the Vale of Glamorgan Housing Building Services Department is asking the Vale of Glamorgan Planning Committee to make a decision on something, and then following a non-binding public inquiry, if it were to go to that route, then the Vale of Glamorgan Public Protection Licensing Committee would be making a decision based on, and ignoring the fact that the Vale Housing and Building Services and Vale Planning Committee have maybe made some recommendations. For me, that leads to a situation where this is not time sensitive, where there is in the process that I think is important that needs to be considered, and would lead me towards a deferral. I have two further very quick points there, Chair. The first is regarding the public open space argument, which is contingent in the report on the completion of the nearby development. I was wondering whether it would be possible, subject of course to what goes on with the village green proposal, to condition completion of the public open space nearby before work begins on this work committee to be interested in doing that. And the other is with regards to the amount of the relative need for affordable housing within this area. As I think Mr. Perry, Councillor Perry mentioned earlier, references are made to the Wenvo ward. Bonvilston and St Nicholas are distinct communities from the Wenvo area, and similarly, we are well aware that the Boundary Commission are looking into changes within the ward structure in the area that might differently reflect that. So I don't know if it's possible, but sort of a better understanding of the Bonvilston and St Nicholas Community Council area, I think, would be helpful in this scenario. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Johnson, for similar issues of finding you the best answers. I'll ask Councillor Cave to make her points, and then of course we can come back in response to those when the planning officer comes back. Councillor Cave.
Thank you, Chair. I can say that I'm in full agreement with what the last two speakers have said, particularly Councillor Johnson, in the case of this being brought to this committee, you know, the first committee since COVID-19. And here we are deciding to give away somebody's very important open space. I don't know how many people on the committee have been down to make a visit to the site, but I popped down this morning and had a look, and it really is a green oasis. It's a beautiful little green site. I'm not surprised that the people that live there want to call it their village green. They decided it's their village green. They obviously see it as a village green, and it's us, the council, that at the moment that aren't seeing it as a village green. It's certainly a very vital piece of green open space there, and I can't believe that we want to, as I say, the first thing we do as a committee after COVID-19 is not only sweep away somebody's green space that has been there for a long time, but we also want to build houses where we're not going to give people any space, hardly anything, because what space we're going to give them is going to be shared with somebody else. I think this is really the wrong application for this site. And I would ask every member of this committee to agree with me that this should be postponed until the village green matter is settled. Because I don't believe we should, as a council, be building on anybody's village green, certainly not given the circumstances that we've just been through in the last few months. So I think actually the council are acting in an unneighbourly way here. And I would, if we aren't going to go and withdraw this application today, I would call for it to be refused.
So just to clarify, you were speaking about a deferral, then you're saying about a refusal. Are you moving a deferral?
I would like to move a deferral, but if it's not going to be deferred, I would certainly propose that we refuse it.
Councillor Driscoll?
I'll second the proposal for refusal.
There's no proposal for refusal at the moment. There's a proposal for a deferral. That was the first one. Are you seconding that in this instance?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. Right. We'll come back to vote on the motion in front of us, which is a deferral. But for the time being, I'll ask Vicky to come back on a number of the points raised to date. Vicky.
Thank you, Chair. I think, do you want me to just deal with the village green matter and then have a vote on that deferral rather than going into all the other planning issues, which may be a waste of everyone's time if that vote goes through?
I think that would be a appropriate use. And in the meantime, perhaps you can make separate contact with Councillor Wilson on the other points. Yeah, if you could speak to the village green, and we'll take the proposal for deferral.
Yeah, I mean, all I would say, so I'm basically just trying to address the points really to persuade members that I don't believe a deferral is necessary in this case. Firstly, the village green issues about the application and whether members may be fettered in terms of governance arrangements about any future decisions that Councillor Johnson referred to. I think I need to refer to our legal officer here. James, I don't know if you're in a position to be able to join the conversation. I know you're on a separate device, or whether you can jump onto somebody's device. I'm going to see if James can come in on that point, because obviously as the legal department deal with the applications for village greens and the governance issues around that. Certainly my understanding is that it's not material to the planning consideration of the application, albeit the issue of open spaces, which we've referred to. So I will come back on that point, but if James is able to join us and address the sort of governance point around village green decisions.
Yeah, hi, can you hear me? My connection sort of went down, so I can't go video, but I
can
hear
speak.
you. We can
So
hear you.
yeah, right. Yeah, so the point in terms of the village green is right in terms of the village green process and the planning process are two separate processes, so they can run concurrently without affecting each other. The result will fundamentally be that should planning permission be granted, if the council was minded to proceed with starting construction and the village green application was then successful, the council would then have to put the land back to the state it found it in, i.e. it wouldn't necessarily make sense to actually start work prior to the village green application being resolved. However, there is nothing to stop the planning decision being made prior to the village green matter being resolved. The COVID crisis has resulted in a delay in the village green because fundamentally where a council is the landowner, the usual practice is that you would appoint an independent inspector to hear the matter, who would then, as Ian said, report back to, or would draft a report independently, having heard the evidence in a public inquiry usually, although it can sometimes be done on the papers depending on the issues. He would then give a recommendation to the council. It would then be highly unusual for a council to go against an independent inspector's recommendations, because obviously there would be a route to appeal and there would be fairly strong grounds if the council sought to go against the inspector's recommendations in those circumstances. I don't know if there's anything else, any other questions, I can take those.
Thank you, James. I've got two councillors indicating, Councillor Cave and then Councillor Thomas. I propose to take your points and then move to a vote on a deferral motion, unless there are substantive questions, obviously, in those points. Councillor Cave, please.
Yes, I just want to come back and clarify. You know, I have said I believe that this is an unneighbourly development, which is a grounds for refusal. I have also said that I believe this is an inappropriate development for this particular place. And I also pointed out that I believe that because we have a site that is potentially legally going to be established as a village green, but actually at the moment is already considered by the people that live there as their village green, that this would not be an appropriate time for us as a council, as a planning committee, to be seen to be passing plans for the development of somebody's open space at this particular time. So there's a lot of reasons, I could go into more. I think that we've got tree preservations orders on the trees for a reason, and what we're saying is we're actually going to take away 22 trees here, and if you go down and look at them, they are beautiful trees. I'm not surprised many of them have tree preservation orders on, and I don't see as a committee how we can sweep aside the village green issue, and I don't see how we can sweep aside the tree preservation issue. So that's why I'm saying I'm giving the committee and the officers the opportunity to withdraw the application, and let's view it at another time when it might be more appropriate.
Before I bring in Councillor Thomas, who is the next to indicate, and then I will come to Councillor Johnson, just to say at this stage we're going to be dealing with the first motion put forward, which was a deferral, and then we'll vote on that, and obviously if that happens, then all the other points you've made are not null and void by any means, but of course they'll be revisited when a planning application comes forward, and this committee can't force a withdrawal of an application. It would be a refusal, but obviously if we've deferred, then of course it would come back. On those points, those are noted, and we certainly note your comments from before with regard to your reasons for refusal. Councillor Thomas, you're next, please.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, it's actually on the idea of a deferral. I'd suggest that there's no need for a deferral if we condition make an amendment to officers' recommendations to the effect that nothing can start until the decision on village green status is decided. So if that were included, then it becomes that then becomes the deciding factor on when and if this application proceeds. I propose that as an amendment.
Okay, I can see you proposing an amendment. Clearly, we'll deal with the deferral application, deferral motion. There are clearly a number of points about the main motion where there are other issues that members have. Councillor Johnson, I saw you nodding when I was saying let's get on with the deferral. Do you have any other points you'd like to make at this time?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I was agreeing with the process of moving to the deferral vote because that takes precedence at this point. I was just going to add a further broader point, which is that should the committee vote in favour of a deferral, that consideration of the points that have been raised should also be taken into consideration before this comes back, and that the timing for return to committee, should a deferral be passed, should be after the village green process has been completed. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, are you happy with that amendment to your deferral motion, Councillor Cave, that the deferral of a consideration of an application is till after the village green application has been completed? Councillor Cave?
Yes, I do. I agree with that amendment.
And Councillor Driscoll as the seconder, you're happy with that amendment?
Yes, definitely.
Okay, fine. Let's get through to a vote now on the deferral motion. I have my list in front of me. I will start myself and I'll say I'm in favour of a deferral. Councillor Birch, please.
Against a deferral.
Thank you. Councillor Cave, I'm assuming you're voting for a deferral?
Yes, please.
Thank you. Councillor Drake, please.
For a deferral.
Councillor Driscoll.
For a deferral.
Thank you, sir. Councillor Edwards.
For a deferral.
Thank you very much. Councillor Hodges.
For a deferral.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Johnson.
For a deferral.
Thank you. Councillor Rowlands.
For a deferral.
Thank you. Councillor Thomas.
For the deferral.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Williams. Councillor Eddie Williams.
For a deferral.
Thank you. Councillor Mark Wilson. You're muted there. Thumbs up for a deferral. Yeah, thank you. All noted. Councillor Margarita Wright. Are you for or against it?
For deferral.
For a deferral. Okay. With all in favour with one against, that deferral passes. Therefore, we will cease this particular application at this time, and it will be brought forward at the appropriate opportunity after the village green application as listed in the deferral. I'd like to thank you all for sitting with us comfortably for 2 hours 40 minutes. For those who are joining the scrutiny meeting starting in 22 minutes time.
Chair, sorry. Chair, sorry.
Go ahead, James.
So I was just going to make a point in terms of the sort of deferral and when it comes back. It's difficult to say that it won't come back until after the village green application is resolved, because if the council in its role as applicant decides that it wants the application to proceed beforehand, then we may be in a position where we'd have to deal with it prior to that. It may not come to that, but I just wanted to make the point that in theory the council could appeal against itself for non-determination if it's not dealt with appropriately. But I don't think that would happen. But I just wanted to make the point that that's possible.
I think we should consider that as if the council was not us, because that is how we're considering it as a local planning authority. And if the applicant wishes to go for non-determination, that's obviously a legal avenue they have, but I would ask the council to respect the wishes of the planning committee who have asked for a deferral. And I note those points. Thank you. It wouldn't be for a lawyer not to point out the legal points, so thank you for that, James. as I was about to say, for those of you joining us in 20 minutes for the Scrutiny Committee, have a great little break for your dinner, and we will see you back shortly. Thank you for bearing with us. I think you will note that as we went through the applications, it was becoming smoother in the process, and hopefully we will have future meetings that are smooth as well. Thank you for your time. That ends our broadcast, as it were, this evening. Thank you.